Hello everyone, it's good to see you back. We are coming in hot with another Prismatic Hunter build that not many players would have ever thought about ever using. Tell me, and be honest, when was the last time you ever touched the hard light in game? Because it's rare to see such a weapon have any sort of use when its purpose feels lackluster. Now over time it has seen many buffs, and now has a general reason to live with today's build. If you like non-stop volatile rounds that just weaken enemies outright, give a damage buff, and also allow you to spam improvised explosives, then you're going to love this more on the Prismatic Hunter with what it holds. Bare bones and easy to use, this build is going places. Starting with the exotic weapon Hard Light and this exotic trait Volatile Light and the fundamentals, it states, rounds fired from this weapon have reduced damage fall off, over penetrates targets and ricochet off hard surfaces. Projectile damage increases after bounce. Alternative weapon action changes the weapon's damage type, cycling between void, arc and solar. Grants this weapon temporary increased damage when you apply or gain an elemental buff or debuff that matches this weapon's damage type. Hard Light has gone through a wide number of buffs over the years to make it more viable for players, and now with the add-on seasonal mods, we can expand its damage and effects even further out. The volatile marksman, void flux, and maligned harvest mods will allow the void weapon to debuff targets for extended periods, while also getting a damage buff and being laser accurate from the get-go. From the gameplay, you will see just how effective this weapon becomes when used in higher difficulties, but do note we won't be using the other elementals on hand since there's generally no point to do so. Still, this will be useful for future updates. Our second exotic is the relativism, with its exotic effect, Spear of the Foe Tracer and Spear of the Gyro Falcon, which states, damaging a powerful combatant or guardian with an ability grants you a temporary damage bonus for weapons matching that ability's elements. Your void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible. While we do have these seasonal mods to provide volatile rounds, this won't always be a case. Firstly, we won't always trigger volatile marksman in most cases, so having this on hand will allow you to maintain that pressure no matter where you are. Spear of Foe Tracer is generally a nice damage buff that's going to buff our strand and void weapon when active. I can see this being a 50-50 with most players, since Hard Light can get a damage buff on its own, but this will help when that stage is not available just of yet. For aspects of Fragments, we have the following. Gunpowder Gamble, where defeating targets with abilities, elemental debuffs or solar weapons, charge up an improvised explosive. Stylus Executioner, where defeating a target affected by elemental debuff grants invis and true sight. Facet of Sacrifice, where while having an arc, solar or void buff, ability Final Blows grants additional darkness energy. Facet of Dominance, where your void grenades weaken targets, while your arc grenades jolts them. A Facet of Balance, where rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Doing the same with darkness damage grants you grenade energy. A Facet of Protection, where while surrounded by combatants, you're more resistant to incoming damage. And Facet of Solitude, where landing rapid precision shots emits a 7 weakening blast on the given target. The simplification of the build is one of the biggest pros that the build has going for it, that many players will generally enjoy. Since a lot of the items and abilities are being linked into our primary exotic, you don't need to add much more to the fragments to enhance it further. Instead, I would explain to you why the following are good picks to have. Our aspects will work in hand with our exotic cloak, which then links back to Hard Light once fully active. This is going to allow you to spam improvised explosives, get a damage buff, apply volatile rounds, and also go invisible. A Facet of Sacrifice is a must, as this will allow us to build up our darkness transcendence energy much more faster compared to not having it on hand. A Facet of Dominance is going to allow our void grenades to weaken targets upon impact, which means we don't need to use our fusion rifle for the quick weakening effect if we choose to. Balance and Protection are both self buffs which are hard to put down most of the time, and Solitude is a good add-on, simply because pairing this up with any accurate weapon is where you'll see the most benefit of it from there. Now, because of how easy the build is, you can customize it further for even more chaos that you like. A Facet of Justice or Awakening are two I will also link in the build, only because they don't require a lot to activate them, but this of course will vary depending on players' playstyles. Now for the mods and stats, here's what we have broken down. Resilience will have ours at tier 10 for a 30% damage reduction. Outside of our Transcendent State and Elemental Resistance mod selected, we do also have faster protection on hand for the extra layer of defense. Because of how the build will be more range based, you're not going to need anything crazy for further strengthening the build, unless that's what you want. A discipline, we have ours at a tier 10 for a 53-second cooldown via magnetic grenades. With faster dominance in hand, we can swap between arc grenades or void depending on use and purpose. We have stuck with void as we can apply a quick weaken effect on targets without needing to waste ammo from our fusion rifle. Because of how fast it comes back and how our build is laid out, you can safely use this as much as you like with little cooldown involved. Of course, if you want more coverage for ad control, then the arc grenade is going to be the second best option. So with these covered now, here are the rest of the key mods that fill out the other key roles. Void Siphon for creating orbs of power when matching elemental type. Heavy Finder, Reserves and Scoundrel mods for a heavy weapon. Impact Induction for a 12% grenade recharge. Momentum Transfer times 2 for a 17% melee charge. Charged Up times 1 for +1 armor stacks we carry. Orbs of Restoration, where picking up an orb of power grants a small amount of energy to your ability with the least amount of energy available. A Void Weapon Surge, where your void weapons get a 10% void weapon buff, which is optional. A Time Dilation, where your decay and armor charge rate has a longer duration. A Distribution for a 4% all ability cooldown when using your class ability. And Outreach for a 12% melee cooldown when using your class ability. As we have covered our exotic primary weapon, I would then advise you to pick a super weapon for the build. These are all optional, like always. A secondary with the Mikhail's reference, with rewind rounds and hatchling. Gotten from the raid, the following is a slept on sidearm that is pretty powerful for any builds that use strand in them. Now, while we don't have much strand based abilities being used, the following will be ideal when you want to quickly trigger Unraveling Orbs, Royal Weave, and Horse Shuttle from the seasonal mods. These do have some level of play that fits well with the patchwork setup we have in mind, while also being good with clearing up minor enemies. Heavy, we have the Doom Petitioner with Reconstruction and Precision Instrument. Pairing this up with Powerful Deconstruction will allow the weapon to destroy bosses and mini bosses with ease this season. You don't need to have a Void linear fusion since I'm only using it with the seasonal mods on hand. You can in fact use other linears you like, as long as you have the right mods to support it. However, having a free burst linear can make short work of most enemies in game, and is generally something you would want to have. So I haven't used or touched the highlight since D2 was first introduced, and even back then, I only used it for PvP because of its stats being a near laser accurate AR. However, I would like to say that the weapon has seen some changes over time that rapidly affects its performance on the field. But most importantly, now is the perfect time to use the weapon with the seasonal void mods we currently have. Hardlight has gone through many changes to become more popular with the user base, and it's thanks to these changes that the weapon works well with any setup designed for it, for applying a constant debuff on hand. Using volatile marksman for applying volatile rounds, the weapon will have a constant damage buff just from activating a buff or debuff on targets. Now this sounds basic as hell at first, but then you have the melee harvest and void flux that also allow you to weaken targets and spread your volatile effects further. This makes the void weapon not only become a laser-like weapon on impact, but its synergy with Gunpowder Gamble, Stardust Executioner, Vassal Solitude, and Disruptor Spike means the key targets affected by this is going to be severely weakened beyond help. But that's not all, as we have a Subclass bond with Spirit of Foe Tracer and Gal Falcon. With these now, all this is doing is making sure that our volatile rounds and damage boost is placed on lock for 100% of the time, which I know you may say that's pointless for the build, but considering this will trigger our aspects more often, but also being beneficial for the future of the build, it holds a lot of weight one way or another. And with that, the build becomes one of the most laid-back setups that goes crazy once you trigger volatile rounds, and that's it. It requires nothing complicated to set it up, and works great for pretty much all content you have in mind, which does include PvP. It might not be an amazing boss killer, but that is fine since if you do intend to use this against bosses, you will need to make a few adjustments here and there. So there we have it. I hope you all enjoyed the build breakdown. If you have any thoughts on the content shared, then please leave a comment below. While if you enjoyed the content and want more of these videos, then leave a like and a sub while you're here. A dim link for the builds located below in the pinned section, and I do advise you to check out my playlist for more. It was great sharing today's video with you all, and I hope to see you again soon.